Historical Review and Current Capacity. 7.2.5 Aboriginal Students. Schools were asked to report on the following items regarding Aboriginal recruitment and enrollment. All but one of the 70 schools reported. Schools were asked to report only the numbers of students who had self-identified as Aboriginal. Results: Aboriginal recruitment and enrollment, N equals 36. 149 students. Number of Aboriginal students currently enrolled. These students were enrolled in 14 schools, or 39% of the schools participating in this study. The numbers per school ranged from 1 to 50. Only 2 schools had relatively large numbers of students, at 48 and 50 per class. 8 schools, 22%. Specific number of seats/places reserved for Aboriginal students, for a total of 62 places. The number of reserved seats per school ranged from 2 to 32. These reserved places could be filled by non-Aboriginal students if sufficient numbers of Aboriginal students could not be recruited. 5 schools %. Number of schools that employ special recruitment strategies to attract Aboriginal students. 7.2.6 Retention Rates. Schools were asked to report on their student retention rates for 4 years, 1999 to 2002. The retention rates were calculated using the reported number of students that were admitted and the number from the class that have completed to date. This gives only a rough estimate of retention rates. The details are reported in Table 34. Table 34. Retention rates for classes entering 1999 to 2002. LPNs year admitted. No schools reporting total students admitted. Total students completed %. Retention rate range. Median retention rate 1999 25 1,267 853 67%. 15 to 96% 70% 2028 1,519 1,095 72%. 19 to 100% 77.5% 2,128 1,558 1,125 72%. 15 to 100% 73.5% 2,222 1,377 945 69%. 21 to 100% 74%. Despite the fact that the number of schools reporting ranged from 22 to 28, the average retention rate per year was remarkably stable, ranging from 67 to 72%. In each year, there was one extremely low retention rate, and these were all from the same school. Year summary of retention rates: 1999 for schools below 50%, 5 above 90%, 2003 schools below 50%, 8 above 90%, 2001 3 schools below 50%, 10 above 90%, 2002 2 schools below 50%, 6 above 90%. Building the Future, an integrated strategy for nursing human resources, page 76. Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. 7.3 Resources to maintain or increase enrollment, LPNs. The second question to be answered was, what resources are available to schools of nursing to support their current enrollments, and what resources would be required to allow them to expand? A set of questions was asked about current resources and constraints on their ability to expand, because the additional resources needed to manage the expansion have not been available. Table 35. Capacity of schools to maintain current enrollment, LPNs. No schools type of resource adequate insufficient excess reporting %. 36 faculty to teach courses 60 for 36, 36 faculty to supervise clinical practice 50-50 34 number of student applications 59 15 27. 34 number of community placements 41 59 34 number of acute care placements 44 56 35 number of long-term care placements 83 99. 30 number of preceptors needed 47 53 35 classroom space 77 23 35 clinical laboratory space, 69 31 33 space for student life, 70 30 35 faculty office space, 63 37 35 meeting rooms for planning, 63 37 30 for financial support for students, 59 41 35 administrative support staff, 50 for 46 35 backup teachers to cover absences, 31 69 35 computers and technical support for students, 71 26 3 35 mentoring of novice teachers, 30 for 66 35 staff to coordinate student sections, 83 17 Note: the number of schools responding varied, so the responses are reported as percentages. Some schools did not respond to some items, and others indicated that they did not require some of these resources, for example, community placements. The resources needed by LPN schools can be divided into 5 categories: faculty, clinical placements, students, space, and administrative support. The 3 most critical are faculty, clinical placements, and students. Percent of schools. Summary of responses by schools on resources. 50% of 35 have adequate faculty resources, except for backup teachers and mentoring capacity. Less than 50% have adequate clinical placements for their students. 60% or more are adequately resourced in the areas of students, space, and administrative support. 60% have too few clinical resources for the students they have now. 50% have too few clinical teachers and preceptors. Building the Future, an integrated strategy for nursing human resources, page 77. Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. Other factors that impact resources. Schools were invited to write down what they had to consider in determining the number of students they can accept. Overwhelmingly, the responses referred to availability of clinical placements. One French language school noted the difficulty in recruiting teachers, as did one English language program located in a remote area, and several schools identified limitations in lab space. Table 36. Capacity of schools to increase enrollment by 10%. LPNs. No schools reporting type of resource sufficient. Additional not possible. 33 faculty to teach courses, 55 46 33 faculty to supervise clinical practice, 30 68 330 number of student applications, 73 27 31 number of community placements, 42 55 333 number of acute care placements, 33 55 12 32 number of long-term care placements, 56 41 329 number of preceptors needed, 45 45 10 31 classroom space, 71 23 732 clinical laboratory space, 50 40 for 6 32 space for student life, 59 30 for 6 33 faculty office space, 49 46 6 33 meeting rooms for planning, 55 39 6 32 financial support for students, 41 59 33 administrative support staff, 36 61 332 backup teachers to cover absences, 19 78 333 computers and technical support for students, 52 46 333 mentoring novice teachers, 21 79 32 staff to coordinate students sections, 56 41 3 percent of schools. Summary of responses regarding increasing by 10%. Half have sufficient space, administrative support, and student applications to accommodate a 10% increase. 30% have sufficient clinical teachers and acute care placements for 10% more students. Most schools could manage a 10% increase if they were provided with additional funds. Building the Future, an integrated strategy for nursing human resources, page 78. Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. Table 37. Capacity of schools to increase enrollment by 25%. LPNs. No schools reporting type of resource sufficient. Additional not possible. 31 faculty to teach courses, 29 71 33 faculty to supervise clinical practice, 9 88 330 number of student applications, 57 43 30 number of community placements, 33 63 332 number of acute care placements, 22 59 19 30 number of long-term care placements, 47 53 28 number of preceptors needed, 18 71 11 30 classroom space, 37 57 7 32 clinical Laboratory space 3856, 629 space for student life 3855, 731 faculty office space 2665, 1031 meeting rooms for planning 4252, 729 financial support for students 2869, 330 administrative support staff 2773, 31 backup teachers to cover absences 1087, 31 computers and technical support for students 5246, 331 mentoring of novice teachers 1681, 331 staff to coordinate student sections 3958, Adding 25% more students reduces the number of schools able to manage this increase with their current resources, but otherwise does not change substantially the scenario involving a 10% increase. Percent of schools summary of responses 55% have sufficient student applicants to be able to manage a 25% increase, and with additional funds, could acquire the resources required to teach them. Most schools could acquire the resources needed for a 25% increase. 20% would not be able to secure the needed additional acute care clinical placements to make it possible. Without these placements, it is unlikely that they could manage a 25% increase despite having access to the additional resources needed in all the other categories. If provided with additional budgets so they could purchase or otherwise acquire the resources in the 5 categories, about 50% of schools could acquire the faculty they need and sufficient clinical placements to increase enrollments by 10%. Student applicants may be a problem, but the answers to the previous question indicated that 73% of schools had enough applicants for a 10% increase. Increasing by 25% is also possible for 50 to 60% of schools. Building the future, an integrated strategy for nursing human Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. Table 38. Capacity of schools to increase enrollment by 50%. LPNs no schools reporting type of resource sufficient additional not possible 30 faculty to teach courses 757 37 31 faculty to supervise clinical practice 758 36 27 number of student applications 37 37 26 30 number of community placements 740 53 31 number of acute care placements 7 42 52 29 number of long-term care placements 28 41 31 26 number of preceptors needed for 50 46 28 classroom space 25 50 25 29 clinical laboratory space 17 62 21 27 space for student life 30 56 15 28 faculty office space 7 64 29 28 meeting rooms for planning 29 54 18 27 financial support for students 1967 7.3.1 Summary of capacity to increase enrollments. In summary, most schools can manage enrollment increases of up to 25% either with current resources or having additional funds to hire more teachers and acquire more space. However, once the proposed increases hits 50%, 30 to 50% of schools would not be able to accommodate these increases because of limited clinical placements or inability to recruit sufficient teachers. With proposed increases of 100%, 70 to 80% of schools would not be able to manage. Comments from schools about resources to manage enrollment increases focused on clinical placements, and to a lesser extent on space issues within the teaching facilities. Competition with RN schools for acute care placements was mentioned several times. A few schools noted that graduates of their programs could not get full-time positions, so there was no point in increasing enrollment. Building the future, an integrated strategy for nursing human resources, page 81. Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. The most limiting factors to enrollment increases reported by schools were the following. No schools most limiting factors 26 schools availability of clinical placements, with acute care mentioned specifically. 19 schools availability of faculty, particularly for clinical teaching. 14 schools sufficient laboratory and classroom space. 9 schools sufficient numbers of applications from students with appropriate backgrounds. 7 schools adequate budget to hire the number of faculty needed. A few schools insufficient preceptors, provincial limitations on numbers, and insufficient administrative support. 7.3.2 Preferred number of students. Schools were asked how many students they would prefer to admit, i.e., how many students they feel they can comfortably teach, given their current resources. The results are as follows. Potential number of admissions. Given current resources, N equals 37, 10 to 730 per class, schools would prefer to admit 2,986 total number of students preferred. This is considerably more than the 1,957 full-time students that the schools admitted in 2003, and is greater than the number they plan to admit in 2004. Given extra financial resources, N equals 33, 1,051 additional students total, schools could manage to take, with proposed numbers ranging from 2 to 150. The majority of schools, 89%, could manage increases in their enrollments with additional financial resources, and more than 1/3 of them, 40% of 33, could manage substantial increases of 28 and more students per class as follows. Increase, no schools that could manage the increase 0 students, 5 schools 2 to 8 students, 5 schools 10 to 24 students, 10 schools 28 to 50 students, 7 schools 60 to 100 students, 4 schools 120 to 150 students, 2 schools. 7.4 Faculty recruitment, LPNs. The schools were asked to report the number of faculty vacancies they were seeking to fill in 2003, the credentials they were seeking in the candidates, the number of these positions they filled, and the difficulty they had in filling them. The vacancies were divided into 3 categories: full-time tenure stream/permanent positions, full-time contract, time-limited positions, and part-time contract positions. The results are reported in the following table. Building the Future, an integrated strategy for nursing human resources, page 82. Nursing education in Canada, historical review and current capacity. Table 40. Number and types of positions available in schools, 2003 type of position no schools reporting no with available positions. Range per school a total no. Available no. Filled. Tenure stream 3418 1 to 639 41 full-time contract 3621 1 to 13,102,100 part-time contract 3526 1 to 27,185,187 of the range refers to the number of positions available in any one school. 7.4.1 Full-time tenure stream/permanent positions. The schools were asked if they were able to recruit people with the kind of credentials and experience they were seeking. Of the 23 schools that responded to this question, 65% said they were able to find the kind of people they were seeking, 13% were not, and another 22% said they were partially successful. Therefore, almost 80% were at least partially successful in finding the type of teachers they were seeking. The schools were invited to write an explanation for their answers. The reasons they gave largely referred to a lack of applicants for positions or applications from individuals who did not have the qualifications sought. In addition to the qualifications listed below, schools sought applicants with clinical experience ranging from 2 to 5 years and 2 to 3 years of teaching experience. N equals 23. Preparation sought 70% BSc for schools, Masters in Nursing completed for schools, at least Masters in Nursing in progress for schools, irrelevant Masters completed for schools, relevant Masters in progress, one school completed PhD in Nursing, others completed relevant PhD. 7.4.2 Full-time contract positions. In addition to the qualifications listed below, teaching experience was the most frequently listed additional criterion sought for these positions. Percent of schools' credentials sought, N equals 35, 82% diploma, in nursing 59% of baccalaureate degree. 2 schools the highest credential sought by any school was a completed Master's in Nursing or a completed relevant Master's. 1 school's Master's in Nursing in progress, 2 schools relevant Master's in progress. Building the Future, An Integrated Strategy for Nursing Human Resources, page 83. Nursing Education in Canada, Historical Review and Current Capacity. 7.4.3 Part-time Contractual Positions. The credential most frequently sought for part-time contract positions was a diploma in nursing. Additionally, schools sought applicants with clinical and teaching experience. %/no schools recruitment criteria, N equals 35, 80% a diploma in nursing, 49% a baccalaureate degree in nursing. This implies that either this or a diploma in nursing would be considered acceptable. 1 to 2 schools completed or in progress masters in nursing or in a relevant field. Recruitment difficulty. The schools were asked how much difficulty they had filling their positions. All 37 schools responded. No schools recruitment difficulty, N equals 37, 21 schools, 57%. Some difficulty 10 schools, 27%. A great deal of difficulty 6 schools, 16%. No difficulty. Most schools identified. Nursing education.